Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into a really big one, a book that gets people talking, that's for sure. Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
It's definitely generated a lot of discussion over the years.
Yeah, exactly. So whether you've, read it cover to cover or you're just curious what all the fuss is about, well, we're going to unpack it for you.
Try and give a balanced view.
So at its core, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it's basically a story, right? A parable.
Mm-hmm.
It's told through the eyes of Kiyosaki as a kid, and he's got these two father figures with totally different ideas about money.
Yeah, you've got his biological dad, the poor dad, highly educated, follows the traditional path, good job, work hard, save, retire. The usual advice.
Right. And then there's his friend's dad, the rich dad. No fancy degrees, but really street smart about how money and wealth actually work.
And the book is all about the contrasting lessons he learned from both of them. It really shaped his whole approach.
So our mission today, really, is to pull out the key ideas, the sort of nuggets of wisdom from the book.
But also, importantly, look at the criticisms. It's not without its controversy.
Definitely not.
We want you to come away with a good, solid understanding of its impact, what's useful, what maybe isn't. And it kicks off with a fundamental question, doesn't it? What were those different ways of thinking?
Yeah, and that brings us straight to probably the most famous bit, the core mindset shift. It's about how they reacted to not having enough money for something.
Yes.
Poor dad would just say,
I can't afford it. End of story. Limitation.
Exactly. But rich dad, he flipped it. He asked,
How can I afford it? Which is, well, it's a question. It opens up possibilities.
it seems so simple, just changing a few words.
But it's huge. That shift from a statement, a dead end, to a question that forces your brain to find solutions, that runs through the whole book.
Right. It's about challenging those beliefs we inherit about money, and trying to break out of just, working for a paycheck forever.
It pushes you to think creatively when you hit a financial wall rather than just accepting it.
Okay, so once you kind of internalize that mindset shift, what's the next big lesson Kiyosaki throws at you?
I think it's about working for money versus...
Making money work for you. Yes,
Yeah.
That's absolutely central.
What's the biggest hurdle for people with that idea, do you think? Even after they read it?
Well, it sounds good,
But-
right? But actually doing it means fundamentally changing how you view work and income.
Yeah.
And Kiyosaki argues pretty strongly that our standard education system just doesn't equip us for this. We learn complex math, literature,
Shakespeare and Shakespeare, yeah.
but not the practical stuff. Like,
Sure.
how does compound interest really work? How do taxes actually impact you? What's smart debt versus dumb debt?
So the challenge is shaking off that deep-seated idea that a salary is the main goal, the only path.
Exactly, is overcoming that programming almost. Which leads right into the next crucial rule from Rich Dad.
Ah, the big one. Assets versus liabilities.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just definitions, is it? It's a whole worldview.
Explain that a bit more,
Yeah.
because it's easy to misunderstand. Well, Kiyosaki puts it very simply. The rich buy assets. The poor and middle class acquire liabilities they think are assets.
Okay. So what's an asset in his view?
Yeah.
Something that puts money in your pocket.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And a liability takes money out. And this is where he gets controversial, especially about...
The house, your own home.
Yeah. He argues your primary residence isn't automatically an asset. Unless it's generating income, maybe you rent out a room or it appreciates significantly faster than its costs. It's often a liability because of the mortgage, taxes, upkeep. It takes money out of your pocket each month.
That definitely makes you stop and think, doesn't it? Especially when we're always told buying a house is the best investment.
It forces you to look critically at where your money is actually going and what those big purchases are doing for your long-term financial health, not just assuming traditional wisdom is always right.
Okay, and staying on that theme of making money work for you, there's that anecdote about Kiyosaki's first job, right? Earning practically nothing.
Oh, the 10 cents an hour story? Yeah, doing basic chores for Rich Dad?
And the lesson wasn't just work hard, was it?
Not at all. Rich Dad used it to teach him something much more profound. It was about seeing beyond the wage, finding opportunities.
Like the comic book library.
Exactly. He saw these old comics nobody wanted, got permission, set up a little library in his basement, charged kids admission. Suddenly, he had a system generating income without him actively trading his time for those 10 cents.
So it's about spotting value others miss and building a system.
Yes. developing that entrepreneurial mindset, looking for ways to create income streams that aren't directly tied hour for hour to your own labor.
Which flows perfectly into the third big lesson. Mind your own business.
Right.
And this doesn't mean, like, telling your colleagues to buzz off, does it?
Haha, no, definitely not. It means focusing on building your own asset column, your own business in the sense of your personal financial engine.
So even if you have a regular job,
Yes, especially then. The idea is your profession might be your job, but your business is managing and growing your assets. Things like investments, maybe some rental properties, intellectual property if you create things.
it's about taking control of your financial future by building things that generate income for you, separate from your salary. Diversification, essentially.
That's a great way to put it, building your own financial foundation.
Okay. And then there's the part that probably feels a bit advanced for some people, the bit about corporations and taxes.
Yeah, the power of corporations. It can sound intimidating, like it's only for big players.
But Kiyosaki brings it down to a more personal level, how the rich use structures differently.
He does. The basic point he makes is that the wealthy often use legal structures, like corporations or LLCs, for their businesses and investments.
And the advantage is?
Well, partly asset protection, but a big part is taxes. He famously says the rich don't pay taxes the same way employees do. In simple terms, a business owner operating through a corporation can often deduct legitimate business expenses before their income is taxed. An employee typically gets taxed on their gross salary first and then pays for expenses out of what's left.
So the order matters. Earn, spend on business needs, then pay tax on the remainder versus earn, get taxed, then spend.
That's the gist of it, yes. Plus, investment income within certain structures might be taxed at lower capital gains rates compared to regular employment income. Understanding these structural differences, even the basics, can really impact your overall financial picture.
Okay, so we've covered some pretty challenging paradigm-shifting ideas there. Let's talk about why this book is stuck around. What are its big strengths?
Well, number one, I think, has to be its simplicity.
You mean how it's written?
Yeah, it's not a dense textbook. It uses storytelling, simple language, very little jargon. That makes it incredibly accessible to people who might be intimidated by finance books.
And because it's accessible, it often acts as that first major wake-up call for people, doesn't it? That mindset shift we talked about.
Absolutely. For so many, it's the first time they've considered that financial freedom is maybe less about how much you earn and more about how you think about and use money.
It challenges that get a good job, work hard, hope for the best narrative.
It really does. And another thing, he talks about fear quite openly.
Oh, right. The fear of losing money, taking risks.
Yeah. His point isn't that the rich aren't afraid, but that they handle fear differently. They don't let it paralyze them. They take calculated risks. And crucially, they see losses or failures as learning opportunities, not catastrophes.
Failure is feedback.
Exactly. And maybe the biggest strength overall is just the sheer inspiration it provides.
It gets people fired up to learn more.
Definitely. Even if you argue it lacks the detailed how-to, it undeniably lights a fire under people. It makes them want to understand investing, assets, cash flow. It opens that door effectively.
But, and there's always a but with this book.
Always. It wouldn't be so talked about if it didn't have its share of criticisms.
So let's get into those. Probably the most common one is what you just hinted at.
Yeah.
The advice is too vague.
Yeah. Buy assets. Okay, great. But which assets? How do you analyze them? Where do you get the money? Critics say it leaves you hanging on the practical execution.
It inspires, but doesn't instruct enough on the specifics.
That's the argument. And then there's the elephant in the room.
Is Rich Dad even real?
Exactly. Kiyosaki himself has admitted Rich Dad is more of a composite character based on several people.
So not one actual guy.
Apparently not. And for some critics, that really undermines the whole thing. They feel like if the central figure isn't real, how much the story and the advice can you trust?
Does it matter if it's a parable, though?
Mm.
Is the message less valid if the messenger is a composite?
That's the debate, isn't it? Where do you draw the line between an inspirational story and a practical guide claiming authenticity? It definitely raises questions.
Other criticism I hear is that some ideas are just too black and white, oversimplified.
Like the idea that all debt taken on by employees is bad, while debt used by the rich to buy assets is good. Or the house example we discussed. The real world is usually grayer, more nuanced than that.
Yeah, good debt, bad debt. It depends on the terms, the purpose, your overall situation. It's not always so clear-cut.
Exactly. And this ties into maybe the biggest danger, the risk of misinterpretation.
How so?
Well, someone reads this, gets super inspired, and thinks, right, I need to quit my job immediately and go speculate on risky assets I don't understand. That could be disastrous.
Yeah, taking the inspiration without the necessary education and caution.
Precisely. The core message should be about getting financially educated, thinking critically, and taking calculated risks over time, not about being reckless. So balancing that powerful motivation with responsible, informed action is key.
So bringing it all together,
Hmm.
my take after really digging back into it is that Rich Dad Poor Dad is brilliant as a Y2 book.
A Y2. Explain that.
It's fantastic at explaining why you should care about financial literacy, why you should think differently about money, why building assets matters. It fundamentally shifts your perspective.
But not necessarily a how-to.
Exactly. It's not a detailed roadmap. For me, personally, reading it years ago, it didn't give me all the answers, but man, it made me ask the right questions. It sparked this huge curiosity about investing, about taxes, cash flow, entrepreneurship. It was the starting pistol, not the whole race.
That's a really insightful way to frame it. It's a catalyst.
Yeah, a powerful one.
And maybe that leads us to a final thought for everyone listening. While Rich Dad Poor Dad can absolutely be that powerful catalyst, that mindset shifter, just remember that true financial understanding, real mastery, doesn't stop there.
Right. The initial spark is crucial, but it's not enough.
No. It requires that ongoing critical search for diverse knowledge, learning the practical strategies, understanding the nuances, considering those valid criticisms we talked about. It's a continuous process.
So the question to leave people with isn't just, did this book change my mind?
Right. It's toe. Okay, now what? Given both the inspiration and the limitations, what concrete, informed steps will you take next to actually build on the ideas we've explored today? What's your next move?